Alright, so in this video we're going to focus on recreating these basic materials. Okay, and these are things that you'll use throughout throughout all the stuff that you're doing. Any kind of scenes you ever make, these same materials are ones you're going to constantly be using over and over and over again. There's wood in typically every scene. There's plastic in lots of scenes, rubber, glass, metal, concrete. Okay. So that's why we want to be able to recreate these so we get a good feel for it. So what you're going to do to start off is copy your preferences, just like we talked about before. Make sure you have the preferences here so that when you hit Alt-C, you hit that, when you hit Alt-D, when you hit Alt-F, okay, and so on. Then we're going to set our project. So we're going to File, Set Project, and we're just going to set it to our lighting setup orientation. Okay, it's all part of the same kind of stuff. And then we're going to create a new scene. Okay, so we're just going to create a plane like that. We're going to create 3 spheres. Okay, and again, I can use that stacking command. There we go. Duplicate the one sphere, shove it back here. Duplicate the sphere, shove it back there. And I want this sphere to be the biggest, so I want to make him the biggest. And again, use that stack command to get him right on the ground. Okay. And then we're just going to create a couple area lights. Now, essentially what we're doing is we can't really create a material without, you know, having the scene set up, you know, with some decent lighting. So I'm just aiming this at that. So I just hit T. So I pull up my manipulator, bring this over here, and I used V. So I just move this with V and it snaps right to that. Okay. Let's go into our light here. We'll tell this to be quadratic. I'll probably have to turn this up to 100. I'll just set it to 100 now. Under mental ray, I'll say use light shape. Set this sample to 1. Close. Under our render settings, I'm going to turn on enable color management. We're going to be using OpenEXR. Come on. Oops, I have to switch this to mental ray first. There we go. And then I can choose OpenEXR. And I'll choose RLE from this. That's good. I'll go to my render view, go to display color management, change my image color profile to linear. Alright, so now let's just see where we're at. So we'll just render. Alright, that's not too bad. Okay, let's take this light and I'm just going to duplicate it, scoot it over here, and then I'm going to tone down the intensity to maybe 50. I may even down it less than that. So it seems pretty good. Okay. I also want to have an environment in here because some of our materials are going to rely on that. Okay, so let's go to our render settings. Let's go to indirect. We'll go to image-based lighting, create. Click the folder. And I'm just going to use that same one that I used before. Okay. Like, this is just for kind of setting this up, and that's it. I'm going to move it up just so I get a little bit more variation. I don't like to have, you know, full sky in there. And then the same thing as before, I'm going to go to my render stats for this object and turn off primary visibility. Okay, and then we'll also turn on final gather. 50, 25, and 50. Perfect. I mean, this is a decent setup just to get started on look development. I'm gonna make this ground just a tad bit bigger, so it's covering that. I'm gonna get my camera kind of locked in place. So I'm gonna select my camera, get this laid out like that, and then we'll just hit S to set a key on it. It's another way to do that instead of doing the bookmark is I can just set a key on this, and then what that means I accidentally mess up. Let's go back in my timeline. Okay, now this is still taking a bit too long, a bit longer than I want it to take. So what I'm going to do is 14 seconds. I'm going to go to Options, Test Resolution, and set this to 50%. Okay, so what that should do to this time is not just cut it in half because we're doing 50%, but it should actually cut it into quarters. Okay, so I pull out my calculator, and we're at 14 seconds, and I divide this by 4. It should be about 3.5 seconds. So 4 seconds. Yep, so we're at about 5 seconds. So that's about good. Okay, and this is much quicker than dealing with the other stuff. All right, now the reason we have 3 spheres, this sphere right here is going to be a gray sphere. This sphere is going to be a reflective sphere, and this sphere is going to be our test textured object. Okay, and where this comes from is in a lot of movies you might see like behind the scenes stuff. Matte sphere. If I pull up a movie called Matte Sphere, nope. What typically they would do in a lot of movies is they would take this chrome sphere and they would take a bunch of pictures of this chrome sphere throughout the set. Okay, and that gives the lighting directors an idea of what's in the scene. Here's a good picture. All right, so it gives them an idea of all the reflections and all the stuff that's going on. Then they would use this as a way to kind of balance out the lighting in the scene to see, you know, where are the major lights coming from. There's one here, obviously, and one there. There's some shadow here. It's hard to see that on the chrome sphere. All right, so that's what we're doing. So this sphere on the left, we're going to assign a Mia. And we'll just call this gray matte. We're just going to go to matte finish and replace. Okay, that way there's no reflectivity in it, no glossiness. We'll take a look at it and see. Now this gray that's here, remember we have to do that gamma correct. So I click on the map here. And because I have my preferences, if I go to Maya, gamma correct should be right here because I favorited it. And if I go to my presets, I should have that 454 already locked in, which I do. Alright, so now we can go back here and put this back to 0.5, which I think was at 0.5, yes. And then we'll just render this again, just so we can see the difference. And a lot of times we want to use this keep image. Keep the image, render it out. Let's take a look. Much nicer. It's just very, you know, flat looking. That's what we want. Okay. And then this sphere is going to be our chrome one. So again, we'll assign a favorite, Mia, chrome sphere, and we'll just use the preset chrome. And I can do another save, but I'll just do the render region, because that guy should change definitely. There we go. Okay, so we're just kind of setting the stage again. Okay, now we're at 6 seconds a frame. Not too bad still. Alright, let's grab the ground. And I'm also going to assign the ground to be that gray matte. Okay, so now this guy is going to be our material that we're going to adjust for all of these. So let's start off at the top, and we'll do wood. Wood is a great one to start off with because it has so many different uses. So here on Google, I found images of different kinds of wood. And some of these are going to depend on the kind of surface that we have. For instance, something like this. That's not really wood. Something like this, which is like the ends of wood, is not really going to be depicted very good on this sphere. It's better off, you know, actually putting it on the surface. But something like this kind of wood, this fine wood, it is really easy to kind of set up on your sphere and have that translate right into your other objects. Even something like this is appropriate for a sphere. It's just when we get into these kinds of things, or these kinds of things, it's just harder to make it look like we're trying to make it look like, okay? Now, as we're talking about this, we should discuss the fact that, you know, I'm in Google Images, and there's a bunch of textures here for wood, but these ones are not ones that I can use for an actual texture. These ones are other people's. People have taken pictures, they've cataloged them, whatever. So I can't legally use these textures here unless I come up to my options for search tools and I change my usage rights to labeled for reuse with modification. Okay, now these ones I could use because they're actually licensed for reusing it for modifications. Now sometimes you can actually go for labeled for non-commercial reuse modifications and get a different set. All right. Typically, I found that they're pretty close to the same thing because people just, you know, they don't care if they're for commercial or non-commercial use. All right, so you can see there's not as many things here. Now, we use CG Textures. So you go to cgtextures.com, you can create a free account, and then you can download a whole bunch of stuff. So if I search for wood, it pulls up, let's see, 3,934 pictures of wood, different kinds of wood. You can see we have planks, beams, flooring, okay, lots of different kinds of wood. And I could even search it over here and go look at doors. So here's some wooden medieval doors. Here are, if I go to more categories, actually painted is a good one. Oops. Like that. Bare, so it's just flat wood. There's also finished wood in here. Well, here's clean planks, new plywood, wood ends. There it is, fine wood. All right, and this is fine wood. Now we also have to consider the scale of this. So in this instance, we're not really doing a scale. You know, we're not really applying this to anything but the sphere. But imagine that we were going to do something like a little wooden duck that would have a different texture than a wooden table or wooden floor. Okay, so a lot of times you want to kind of research the stuff and see what these things actually look like. So if I'm making, let's say, a wooden duck, let me take this non-filtered off. Let's say carving. There we go. So here's a wooden duck carved out of wood. You can see the colors of the wood. You can see the grain pattern. You can see all this, you know, stuff inside here. Here's another one. That was easier to see the grain pattern. Okay, so you get an idea of what the grain looks like. So when you come to CG Textures, you could say, okay, well, which one of these kind of matches? This one wouldn't. If we look at this and I hit Z, come on. I don't hit Z. You can see that this is more like planks. This is more like individual pieces of wood glued together. Whereas something like this is one big piece of wood. This is one big piece of wood. Okay? Going to the planks here, these wouldn't work either for creating that little duck. So we have to be aware of what we're doing in order to do that. So for this example, this wood here, we're just going to be doing like a flat piece of wood, kind of like we were doing something like this duck. All right, so we want to find a flat piece of wood texture. So something in the fine wood category would be sufficient. Okay. We're also going to try to find something in the fine wood, but something that's a little bit dirty too. Okay, so let me see under. Let's see, wood planks dirty. Let's see. Don't go too tough on our first one. Let's just keep it in the fine wood area. Okay, so I'm just going to download one of these guys. So as a paying member, I get 100 megabytes a day I can download. As a free member, you get 15 or 16, something like that. So I'm going to download this file. Now it comes in a bunch of different sizes. I want the biggest one. Okay. Now you may not be able to get the biggest one because of just your limitations of how much stuff you can download in a day. So if that's the case, then try to download, the next biggest, the large. All right, but definitely the small I've never really found to be beneficial. If you get the biggest one, you can always resize it to all of these, so it's not a big deal. Also notice that this one says tiled, and what that means is if I go to the preview and I look at this is a 7x7. Here's what it looks like when it's tiled one after the other. So there's actually 7 different pictures going side to side. Some of the images will not be able to do that. Some of the images are just going to be one-time use kind of things. You could tile it, but it's not going to look right. So I'm going to download the biggest one, and I'm going to go to my work folder, and I'm just going to paste it in here. Okay. Right now we're not really organizing our textures. Eventually we'll get into the process of making a folder for woods, making a folder for metals. Okay, that way it's easier to find all of our stuff. In this, we're only going to have, probably one texture for each. Alright, so let's assign our Mia to this. Assign Mia. Wood Mia. And what we're going to do is we're going to map that file to this. So we're going to click on the folder, or the map button, go to File, go to the icon, and we're going to do that wood find. Okay, so now we hit 6, and when we render this, we're going to see that we have a wood texture here. Okay, shrink that down. We'll zoom in on it. Alright, so now this looks okay. It doesn't look perfect. It's just a little bit too clean of a wood. I've never seen a wood that's like that shiny. Okay, so I want to change a couple other things. Also, that texture we brought in is a little bit fuzzy. If you'll notice in this File tab in the etch editor that this filter type is set to quadratic. That should be set to off. Okay, that way it doesn't filter my texture. I'm going to hit the There's a new button. Just look at it. Hit the back button here. And I'm going to adjust some of these parameters. But let's go into that wood here. And let's take a closer look at some of the stuff of it. Alright. So some of these areas, like you can see, there is a little bit of a crack right there. And this little dark pattern right here is, suspicious of something there. Okay. Same thing kind of here, same thing over there. Alright, so basically what I'm looking at is these dark areas on this. I don't think I want those to be as reflective as the other areas of my scene. Okay, basically this is like super duper glossy, like they put 17 coats of wax on there. So what I'm going to do is open Photoshop. And we're going to bring that texture in and we're going to create a reflectivity map. Whoa, that was like super quick. It's the quickest Photoshop's ever opened. We're going to create a reflection map that we can apply to either the color or the reflectivity to get these to look a lot better. Alright, so let me just open that up. Okay, now the first thing I need to do is isolate these dark areas. So I could go in with the pen tool and drive myself crazy trying to outline this thing. Okay, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to try to do is use some of my other selection tools. So first thing, duplicate. So just drag this to the new button. So now we have a copy. Let me go to select color range. I'm just going to eyedrop this. Try to eyedrop the darkest area. There you go, something like that. And I can play with the fuzziness. And you'll see that I'm picking up this dark area here, the dark area on the bottom, some of these other little splotchy areas. Okay, I don't want to go too high, obviously. I just want to find that nice middle ground, something like that. All right. So now I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm just going to I hit D to reset these to black and white, and I'm just going to fill that with black. Okay, I'm going to go to select deselect, I'm going to make a new layer underneath. I'm going to fill that with white. Okay, so essentially what this is going to do is in these white areas, it's going to be 100% reflective. In these black areas, it's going to be, in the totally black areas, it's going to be 0 reflective. Okay, and then in these grayish areas, we'll get some mix in the middle. Right? Now white's going to be a little bit too strong. I don't want my thing to be super reflective in those areas. So I'm actually going to go down to my white and pick something in the, let's say, that range. I'm at a 40%-ish. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to save this. So I just save as. And let's take this and call this wood reflection. I want to save it as an if. And every time we save it, we want to do a Maya if. There we go. So now we're going to come back into Maya. I'm going to go to my reflectivity, go to my file, folder, and here's my reflection. Okay. So now let's save this image and then re-render it. You always want to save it so you can compare it. If you don't save it, you have nothing to compare it to except your memory, which, you know, could be a little bit foggy from the last time you looked at stuff. Okay, so now it's actually looking maybe even a little bit more reflective. All right, so let's take a look at that and see. Let's go back to the wood. Let's turn this filter type to off. Let's make sure that's off, just like the other one. I'm going to go down to color balance, and where it says color gain, I'm just going to pull that down. Okay, and what that's going to do is take our color and just knock the white down. So even though it might have been gray here, it's going to darken it even more. Okay, let's do another save. Now, I'm going to go back here and take this glossiness down. Let's say 0.5. Set my samples to 1. Okay, and the surface is still looking a bit too smooth. That definitely helps, just kind of diffusing that. But our surface is still looking a bit too diffuse also. So we're going to go to the hypershade. There it is. Here's our wood. I'm going to click on the double arrows to graph it out. And what I want to do is this file 2, that's the reflection. So I can even call this wood reflection file. I'm going to middle drag my wood reflection file onto this and then go down to standard bump right there. And then the bump depth I'm going to set 2.1. Okay. So now what this is going to do is that it should break up, where's our render view? It should break up the surface a bit more. Okay, so we'll render it again. We'll save and render. There we go. Now it's looking like wood, having broken up that surface away from where it was a minute ago. Okay, so there it was a minute ago. Now look at it. Much nicer looking wood. And if we come back to this reflectivity, we can always pull this color gain up. Okay, if we wanted to add a little bit more reflection in there. Or we can go back to Photoshop and just take this gray and fill that with a brighter white. We could do that as well. It's subtle. It's barely doing anything. Alright, let's resave this one with a little bit lighter gray. Make sure we save it as an if. Wood fine reflection. Yes, yes. Okay. We reload it here. And this whole process is called look development. You're just building the shaders essentially. There you go. So now we have a little bit more reflection in there. and we have, you know, the bump and all that stuff. I actually like the way it looked here compared to that. Okay, so again, I could even go back into this. Oops. And my first one was at 40, this one's at 70, so maybe I cut it right in the middle and go to 50-ish. 55 would be the actual middle, but it's close enough. There we go, that's good there. It's a nice little medium. Yeah, that's good. Okay, just a little bit more reflection. Alright, so the wood is done. Wood is good, so we're just going to save our scene, which we should have done a long time ago. Material, light, and dev. Okay, and I meant to say look dev, but I typed light dev. Let's correct that. There we go. Alright, so the wood's done, so we're just going to leave the wood material. Now we're going to leave this existing material, we're going to leave the wood right where it is, and then we're just going to make a new material right on top of it. So it gets rid of that one, makes a new one. And now we can go down to the next one, which is plastic. So plastic Mia. So let's start off with a preset. If we go down to matte plastic, replace, we get this. I don't like the color that's here, so I'm going to click that. I'm going to go to my gamma correct. I'm going to replace it with my 454. And I'm going to pick a color. And I really like this color blue, like a skyish blue. You can pick whatever color you want. I think that should be good. Okay, so already just doing that, it pretty much looks like a blue plastic. Okay, but just like before, if we do our research, you know, obviously everyone knows what plastic looks like, but you should do some research to figure out what kind of plastic that you're trying to go after, as opposed to a plastic bag, plastic egg. Look at this, 2 kinds of plastic eggs. That's actually painted plastic. Here's a couple different things there. Okay, so there's lots of different kinds of plastic. That is crazy. So you want to do your research. Okay, so now one thing I'm going to try to emulate in this. Now it looks like there's some grain happening in here, and we do have some glossiness, so it is breaking it up. Take this glossy samples down to 1. But what I want to have here is the reflection kind of broken up, like it's a bit of a, you know, not dirty plastic, but there's some scratch marks on it. But I also want to have some bumps to it. Okay, if I crank my render settings up, this is going to smooth out a whole lot, and I don't want that. All right, so I'm going to go back to CG textures, and I'm going to look up plastic here. It's another good way to like reference things, because there's so many different kinds of plastic and things that we can do. So here's plastic packaging. Here's plastic rubber. Okay, now I'm going to try to find something that's kind of a neat texture right there. More categories, plastic. I'm going to try to find something that just has some scratches on it, just some like scuff marks. Man-made lights, various vents, scaffolds. There you go. Something like this, but I don't need, you know, the full thing. So let's just say I use this guy. Okay, so I'm going to click on him. You'll see I get several different pictures in this case. And some of these, I thought I saw one that said tile. Maybe not. Nope, there's no tiling ones in this. Okay, so I'm going to try to find one that looks good. Now, some of these, it look like they're a little bit of perspective on them. Okay, so I have to be very careful of what I use there because I can't really have perspective on something that's supposed to be flat. So I want to find something like this that is perfectly flat head-on. And I liked further up here this guy there. Okay, nice scratch marks. So again, I'm going to download, save it, and then I just dropped it into my source images. Okay, so I want to play with this. My Photoshop image here for the wood, I'm just going to save this, and this is where I would save my PSDs to another area. So I'll typically go back here to my source area, textures, PSD. Now I'll put all of these in here. We'll call it wood fine. That way if I ever need to reference this and come back and play with these again, I can do that. Not that it took that long, but some of them will take a lot longer to do. So I'm going to open my crackles, and I'm going to do the same little select color range. I don't need to duplicate it because I'm not doing anything to the exact layer. And let's go and zoom in. And again, I'm picking a dark area, and I'm adjusting that fuzziness. Now you'll see how this is kind of creeping in from the outside. That's just one of those things of, it's the image is darker around the edges, so that's what it's going to do. And sometimes it makes more sense to kind of pick on something else and just see different results. Like that looks pretty uniform across the entire thing. So I'm going to use that like that. Okay, actually I'm going to go a little bit higher, 26. Make a new layer, fill one with black, deselect, new layer, fill the other one with white. Okay, this gives me a good indicator as to what I'm looking at. Alright, lots of detail in there. That's what we want. I want to make a new, just merge these together. No, I'm not going to merge them together. I'm just going to go here and go to levels. I'm going to get a levels, darken some of these. I could even cut out some of those. Something like that. Okay. I could even say this black here, I don't want it to be black. I want it to be gray. Okay. Play with those values just like we were doing before, but now I have, these two sliders that I'm doing. There we go. So let's say that looks good. Okay. So you can see what I did. I brought these two in the middle just to isolate the center area here. And then I brought these over here as my output colors. So I'm going to save this into my source images as an if. Plastic crackles. Maya if. Yes. Back to Maya. Let's go to the reflectivity. Let's go to File. Turn this to off. Plastic crackles. There we go. And we'll also set this on the bump. So I go to the hypershade, I click on my plastic, I click on the double arrows, and I'm going to middle drag file 2 onto here and go to standard bump. And I just take this bump depth down. The default 1 is always too high. Okay, so now we'll go back to our render view, make sure we save, and then render it again. Okay, and definitely broke up our reflection some. I think we'll see a lot more of that once we kind of clean this image up. Alright, so that looks good for plastic. Plastic is done. Okay, I may tweak these later also, but for now we're good. Alright, so the next one on the list is metal. Okay, and metal you'll see is pretty much the same thing. So let's go to EMEA, metal underscore EMEA. Couple different kinds of metal. Here's some metal objects. These are kind of cool. These are just chrome, but you'll see that there's like a black coloring or paint inside there. Here's more of like a brushed metal. There's obviously a chromy material. Here's just a chunk of dirty metal, chromy. Okay, lots of different kinds of metal. So I always want to look at what kind of metal you're going to do. So for this one, I'm going to show you satin metal because this is kind of a neat looking metal. You can see it's going to take our reflection here, and it gives us this kind of like brushed look to it. Okay, and it's kind of a neat way to start your metal. And the big thing with this one is that if we look down here under anisotropy, it's using this to create that line. If I set this back to 1, you'll see that this highlight goes to a perfect circle. I set it back to 0.1, and you'll see how it spreads it out. Okay, so that's where that's coming from. So we can obviously go like halfway between if we wanted this to have some other kind of look. If we wanted to spread the other way, we can change that as well. Okay, so just so you're aware of that. Also under the glossiness, let's set this to 1, the glossy samples. If I take this and I make this brighter, you'll see that that gets really sharp. If I take the glossiness and spread it out, now that gets more spread out. Okay, so that's where that one's coming from. So I could even take this satin metal, replace it, and then go to my chrome and replace this one with like 25%. Okay, so I'm actually kind of like mixing the two. Just for fun, let's see what that gets us. So much fun. Okay. Alright, I didn't save the last one, that was bad. But that's the mix. Okay, and just like the plastic that we have here, we want to do some stuff to the metal also. So let's save our plastic. Again, I'm going to put it into my source folder, textures, PSD, call this plastic, crackles. Close it. Let's go find a metal. And metal is really good. There's a lot of grunge maps for metal because there's, here's rusty metal, here's pitted metal. I want to find just scratches. Here it is, metal scratches. You see there's like scratched up metal. This one, I like that one there. Let's see if there's any other ones I like. And some of these are very specific. This one here with these wear marks on top, it wouldn't be, on the side of it, or you have to have a reason why the scratch marks are where they are. Okay, these ones being on top, maybe this was something that constantly got scratched. Something on top of it, then drug down. Yeah, I like the one that was up there. Let's just go with that one. Okay, but this one here, we got a lot of contrast in this one. I'm gonna grab that one. This one's good. We'll download again the biggest one. I'll put it in my source images. Open that in Photoshop. We'll do our color range. I'm trying to grab the white this time. There we go. Okay, new layer. One's going to be black. Deselect. Another new layer underneath. Make that white. Perfect. Nice little scratch marks on here. Okay. So let's go to save as an if. Metal scratches. It's actually perfect. Look at that. We'll get rid of the number on the end. The number can be helpful to kind of relook up which image you used, but we don't need it for this case. Back to Maya. We can drop this onto even color. Take the filter type off. Metal scratches. If. And let's go to the hypershade. And we're just going to middle drag file 3 onto here. Go to standard bump. Lower the bump. Okay, so let's save it and re-render. And again, some of these we're not going to be able to see totally until we do like a full-blown rendering of this. But this one you can definitely see there are some scuff marks here. It's not a perfectly clean surface. And that's what we want there. Okay. I think I want to adjust this color here. Okay, because this is not a solid color, this really should be going through a gamma correct. Okay, it looks like it's about 20%. I could even just slide it like that. Alright, so let's save that again, render it again. So I want the metal to be a bit darker. Let me take the color of this down more. There we go. This wasn't a huge difference. I'm liking that. Let's go back. Let me take. Let's see. Let's take the reflection down a touch. 0.5. Let's go down to our anisotropy. I'll set that to 0.1. Well, let's see where we're at. I'm going to add a bit more glossiness to this. A bit more reflection. I think I took too much of it away. There you go. That's looking good. Just for fun, sometimes I like to just go to an extreme. So I'll take the glossiness to 0.1. That way I can look at it and see, you know, what is the glossiness doing to the surface. Go to an extreme, see if it looks better. It actually looks worse. It looks like there's a big dimple now inside here. Okay, so that's definitely not the way we wanted to go with that. Let's re-render that. Oh, also, let me hit escape. We can click on this metal material and save this and re-render it. And that'll, remember, change the color of our highlight. Alright, let's not do that. In this case, probably because we have a file coming in here, it just got rid of the whole thing. Alright, that's good. That's a pretty good metal right there. Okay, we're getting a lot of color from our other area. Let's adjust some of these a little bit further. Make sure I turn that. Turn the filter off. Good. For a lot of these scratches and scuff marks, you need to have a high-res image. If it's not high-res, it's just going to be, you know, horrible. There we go. So I like the way that's looking now. That's good. Okay. So that's metal. We adjusted the color, the weight. We didn't adjust the roughness. We could have adjusted that as well, but we didn't. We mapped this. We adjusted reflectivity and glossiness. Adjusted anisotropy. And down under bump, we added that bump. Okay, there's another important thing inside here, which is a BRDF, which is basically how it's reflecting. Okay, so it's from the 0 degree, it's reflecting one way, and from the 90 degree, it's reflecting another. So basically, like head on, what we're looking at is 0.8, and as we go around the corners, it's reflecting more. Just to exaggerate that, let me pull this down to maybe 0.1. And you'll see that we have a different reflection in the two spots. Okay, so you can see here, it's definitely a lot more reflective on the sides than it is right in the center. Okay, and then there's this gradation that goes through. And that's true of surfaces. If you look at cars, they reflect differently depending on where you're standing. We could also use this Fresnel reflection, which is a different way to calculate how that reflection is happening. And again, you want to look at these things and see, is it helping your scene at all? In this case, no, it's not, so we'll just turn it off. Okay. So besides that, metal's done. Cool. So we're just moving right along. Let's do glass now. So we'll go to lighting and shading, assign favorite, Mia, glass underscore Mia. And in this, again, we're going to start off with a preset. There's frosted glass, which is really cool. So essentially what it's doing is it's making it transparent like glass, but then also like blurring the reflection. So we get this frosted kind of look. All right, we're going to go with just a physical piece of glass. And you'll see with the glass that this one does by default use that Fresnel reflection. Okay, so here's our glass. Again, we want to go through and we want to tweak some of these settings. So under this color here, I'm going to drop in a file, turn this filter type to off, and I'm going to use that same metal scratches. Okay, that way in the white areas we have that same white, but in these black areas we're going to have some scratches. Should be good. Let's see. We'll have to adjust it and pop it onto bump as well. I just want to see what it looks like without any of the other stuff. Okay, nothing in the real world is perfectly clean. There we go, look at that. It looks much nicer than the one I didn't save. Okay, so let's go to the hypershade. Here's our glass. Middle drag the file onto here and go to standard bump. 0.1. I'm actually going to go the opposite way. Negative, come on, negative 0.05. Because I would think like glass, I'm trying to imagine this piece of glass and how it was created and how it got the way it was. This piece of glass here, it has these marks on it. Well, that was the wrong way. Let's save that and re-render it. And then maybe it got some dirt, and this bump is not really like a bump like it's bumped in, but it's more like dirt that's just on the outside of it. Yeah, so it's still too much here. Let's go 0.01. Maybe it, someone smudged it or whatever. Yeah, look at it. See, there's the bump there. Much nicer. Okay, now on the other ones, the plastic and the metal, it looked like, it was kind of grainy so we couldn't really see it, but it looked like it was bumping outward as well, or inward as well. I'm going to go even lower on this. So once we up our settings and we're doing like our final renders, then we'll be able to see this stuff happen. There you go. That's nice. I like that glass. It has a good, look to it there. We could adjust things like the glossiness of it. We want it to look more, not crystal clear. Maybe it's a little bit fuzzy. So we can take this to 0.9, let's say. Take our glossy samples to 1. There we go. That looks pretty nice. We could even use, in this case it's not going to do us any good, but there's a maximum distance, so we could just say at some point that this isn't going to be refractive anymore, and it's just going to go to this color. So we can also set that. And because we do have this color, we should go into that and click the soft filter. I think we're good for right now. I don't think it's even reaching that. Okay, so glass, done. See, once you get the process going, you really kind of develop a workflow. Rubber and concrete. So again, we'll click this. We will assign a new favorite. Rubber_Mia. Let's start off with rubber. And we'll just see what rubber gets us by default. Alright, that looks pretty good. Looks like a rubbery type of material. This is a hair off of black, so it's not going to be too big of a deal. We shouldn't need a gamma on that. But I do, a lot of the coloring in this is coming from the reflection, obviously. So we do want to add in some of our stuff. Let's go look at some rubber objects. Okay, rubber tires, rubber boots, rubber bands. So rubber piece there, rubber gloves. Okay, lots of different rubbery kind of texture. It's kind of neat, it's like melted rubber. It's like really wild. Alright, so we're going to go with just another dirty rubber texture. Take our glossy samples to 1 there. Let's go to CG textures. And you'll see these different patterns that are on here too. Really neat to kind of use one of those patterns. There we go. Let's use that guy. Like the one with a hole in it, like that one. You want to find something you can, use over and over and over again. And some of these you can't. Like this one, you use it over and over and over again, people are going to see that little pit. So you're going to see that little pit. Okay, so you want to find something that you can use multiple places. Let's save this to same spot. Metal scratches, PSD, closed. Good. Let's drop rubber in here. And here's this. I'm going to take that out of here. I don't want that in here. So I'm going to go to my rubber stamp. Alt click here. It's a little bigger. And I'm just airbrushing that out of there. There we go. So if there's something we don't like in a photo, we are free to take it out of there. Alright, so that's good to hear. And this one, I'm going to just see what the levels does. Just clicking on that, adding a levels. There you go. Pulling it up like this, I think that looks kind of neat. I'm also going to add a hue and saturation to this. I just want to take all the saturation out of it. Right. Undo this, you can kind of see there's some bits of reds and purples and blues. There's no need for that. Let's just desaturate it. Don't have to worry about it. Alright, so let's save this out. Source images, if rubber scratches. And you can use these over and over and over again for a multitude of things. I'm using it for rubber, metal, and kind of rebuilding them every time. But there's nothing wrong with you creating your own stuff as you go. So let's go to the reflection color. Filter tapers off. That way it doesn't blur it. Rubber scratches, good. Now let's look at this. This is basically white on black. Okay, right. So if I go back to this, my color here is actually black. So if I want to use this texture on that, I would have to bring in another one, right? No, I don't. So what I can do is go into my hypershade. It's my rubber material. And let's just take a little snapshot before we do this. I'm just going to render it. See what that looks like. Alright, that looks good. And then we're going to adjust it. So I have my rubber material mapped out. And I want to use this file, but I want to swap the colors. Inside of utilities, there's an invert somewhere inside this list. Or a reverse, that works too. Click the reverse. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, it needs an input. That's how reverse works. So if I take this file and drop it onto input, it'll reverse the coloring here. So if I middle drag, drop this on here, it'll say, how do you want to connect it? And I can just say, well, just take the out color and use it as the input. Okay, because I want to take the color information from this, drop it into here, and then I can reverse it. Okay, so now what's going to happen is the opposite is in this one. So this is essentially dominantly white. This one is dominantly black. So as I take the rubber, middle drag this onto color, we should see that appearance. Okay, there's our file texture. So now let's take a look at this. We'll save that. We'll render it again. And now we have this dirtier, rubbery kind of texture. Okay, now it looks too flat. We definitely need to add that to the bump as well. So we'll go to our hypershade again, our rubber material, graph it out, and then we'll just take this file 5 and drop it onto here and just say standard bump. Take this down to it's like a negative 0.05. Rubber, I'm assuming, would be something where it would be like gashed, where it would be losing part of the surface. There we go. Okay, so definitely a huge improvement over the original that we had. Okay, now I could even tone this down. If I saw inside here, let me scoot this stuff around, or just click that and remap it, that this reverse, maybe that's a little bit too drastic. Okay, and I don't want to go to Photoshop and tweak it here and have two separate files, because that just eats up memory. So if I go back to my utilities, there's actually a contrast node that I could use. There is a multiply divide node somewhere in here. There it is. Okay, so I could actually take this in here. Okay, again, it wants two inputs. The first input is going to be this. Okay, so I'm just going to middle drag reverse onto input 1. And then I'm just going to take this and go 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5. And what that's going to do is it's going to cut the colors in half. So the white that's in here, that might be maybe a little bit too strong in some of these areas, it's going to knock it down. It's going to be 50% grays. So now I can just take this and just middle drag it onto color. You can see the white's got a bit lighter. Save, render again. Yep, that definitely looks a lot nicer. Okay, so we're going to say rubber is done. We may want to adjust some properties later, but I think we're good. Just for fun. I'll pull the reflection up a little bit and the glossiness up a little bit. I just want to see what that's going to do. Yeah, so that looks good. Alright, that's cool. Alright, good. So rubber's done. Let's go to our final one, which is concrete. So again, we come to CG textures, look up concrete, go to our Google images, look up different kinds of concrete. Okay, see something like this? It's darker on top, lighter on the bottom. So when we look at those textures, that could be a deciding factor. Okay, here's concrete wall with a whole bunch of holes in it. These are kind of cool. This is just damage plaster. So if we wanted to have like two different textures matched on top of each other, we could do that too. Concrete here. Let's do something a little bit more interesting than just plain concrete. There we go. So this is kind of a neat concrete here. So I'm going to grab this. And look at that one, huge. 21 megs. You wouldn't be able to download that one. I can. It's always good if you're really serious about going into 3D is to get an account. Even if you unofficially share it with a friend. Alright, so here we are in Photoshop. I've opened the image. A lot of detail in this one. It's really nice. Again, I want to take out some of the stuff that just doesn't need to be here, so I'm going to use my clone stamp. Clone out that T. I could also try using the spot healing brush. Just going over the T with this. Let's see what happens. Yeah, did a pretty good job. There we go. Oh, that's cool. I'm not liking the yellow. Oh, I guess it's good. Should be careful that as we're repeating it, if we were, we wouldn't have that. Okay. So now let's go to select color range. Again, we want to grab that dark value because that's where those bumps are. That's where the lines are at. Let's make a new layer. Make it black. Deselect. Make another new layer. Make it white. That looks pretty good. A lot of detail in there. That's what we want. I'm going to drop a levels on here, or a curves on here, so I can adjust some of these things. So what the curves allows me to do is basically flatten out the black areas and then flatten out those white areas. Okay. Now if we go back to the original here, I'm envisioning that this area, it's not perfectly flat, but it's flatter than this might lead it on to be, because there's a lot of grain in there. So by using that curves, you can see how it cleans up some of that stuff. There we go, that's good. Let's save that into here as an if. Then we're going to drop it onto our reflection color. As far as presets to start, there isn't really one for concrete, so we'll just start with a blank slate. Oops, I grabbed the wrong one. Concrete dirty, there we go. And if we look at this, you can kind of see just that specular around there. Let me soften this some, take that up some. You can see that reflection map inside here. All right. So we don't want a whole lot of reflection. If we look at the source that we have, this guy here, I can't imagine too much reflection. There's going to be some glossiness, but not a whole lot. So let's take the reflectivity down. Let's take our glossiness and really spread it out first. So let's take this to 0.1 also. Glossy samples to 1. And you'll see that it's starting to crawl. I'm going to save my file while we're working on this. To this color area, let's go to File, off, go to our concrete dirty. Let's render it and see where we're at. I'm going to need to add a bump to it, which I haven't done yet. You'll notice too that this rendering is taking a lot longer than the other ones. With those file sizes creeping up to 75 megabytes a file, it's going to take a long time. 23 seconds. Our last one was 7 seconds. Okay, so it's by far the longest rendering we've had of these. So let's go to the hypershade. Let's go to concrete, graph it out. Let's go to file 6, which is our black and white one. And we're just going to middle drag it. Go to standard bump. Let's put this one to 0.25. See what that's going to do for us. Let's save and re-render. So here is the before, there's the after. So it just adds another little bit of depth to this thing. I think I'll even take this up to maybe 0.5. Okay, 22 seconds to render. There we go. I really like that depth on there. Okay, and it's a cool scene. Now, if this was something where we actually wanted this wall and our characters getting close to it, we might have to model some of this detail in here to really give it some depth, or add what's called a displacement map. Lots of different things that we could do to make that even further realistic. Okay. For now, we're good. All right, so that's our last one, which is this concrete shader. So I'm going to save our scene again, and so now we're going to do the final renders of these. All right, so let's go back to our display. Nope, options. There we go. And test resolution, camera set, render settings, and let's go to our render settings. Let's go to quality. Let's pull our quality up. Let's go to common. And I'm going to make this 1280 by 720. Okay? And I'm actually going to creep in a little bit closer on my camera. If I click this blue circle, that tells me how close I can be. I want to be really close. So I'm going to click on the select camera. I'm going to zoom in. And I'm going to hit S to set a key on that. That way I'm right on, super big. Make sure I'm balanced. That's good. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to render out each one of those. So I'm going to do this in a way that's just to show you a new method for doing this. It's kind of a neat way to do it. If I go to the outliner, you'll see I have all this stuff that's laying out right here. Okay, from polyplane 1 down to mental ray. I'm going to go to my render tab and I'm going to create 6 new render layers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It counts it for me too. So on each one of these render layers is the exact same thing at the moment. Okay, but what I can do is assign different textures onto the render layers, and then I'll be able to see those different textures without destroying my master layer. So I'm going to go to number 1, and we'll call this one concrete. Okay, that's what that bottom one is. And then the next one's rubber. And then the next one's glass. And then metal, plastic, wood. Metal, plastic, wood. Okay. And so what I'm going to do here is on the wood one, I'm just going to click on this. Go down to assign existing material and say wood. There it is. Okay. I'll go to plastic, right click on this, assign existing, plastic, metal, right click on this, assign existing, metal, glass, right click, assign existing, glass, there you go, rubber, right click, assign existing, rubber. Okay, so now if you look at all of these, you'll see that they all have individual materials on them. It's a great way to do look development because I don't have to destroy something I've already done. Okay, if I want to work with glass, I jump to the glass one. If I want to work on concrete, jump to the concrete one. Okay, if I want to do something to the entire scene, I would go to the master layer. Okay, we'll get more into what these render layers can do further, but this is what we're using it for now. So I'm going to go back to my render view, or my render settings, and where it says file name, I'm going to erase that, and I'm going to right click and say insert layer name. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to insert whatever name this is. So I'm going to also put in before this, put my last name, Sarcona underscore enter. So now it's going to be Sarcona underscore wood, plastic, metal, glass, rubber, concrete, whatever. Okay, cool. So now we'll close that, and we'll go to our rendering menu, and we'll say render, batch render. Okay, so now what this is going to do is it's going to render each one of those render layers and save it out. So we don't have to worry about changing this to metal, rendering out metal, checking it. Rendering it as wood, checking it. Rendering out as glass, checking it. Okay, it'll render out all of these and we can check them all at once. Okay, so once this is done, then we'll go through and look at that. Alright, so that finished, and it took a while to do, maybe like 20 minutes or so. Some of them obviously are going to take longer than others, but you can see the quality of them is astonishing compared to where we were at before. Some things I need to adjust still. If you look at the edges of this, you can see some faceting. So what I need to do in Maya is I need to go to this and hit 3. That smooths out that sphere. I'll do the same thing to the other two. And that'll trickle down to all these other ones. And then I'll have to re-render that. Okay, so I'm going to look through these and see what else I need to do. Now the way I open them inside Nuke is that I just went into my images folder and grabbed them and drug them right into the node graph. And then scoot the viewer down, grab all the images and hit L. And that lays them out. I'm assuming that's what the L means. Okay. And then I just went to this one, click 1. This one, click 2. This one, click 3. This one, click 4, 5, and 6. And now if I click up here, I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to cycle through those different pictures. Okay, much easier than playing around with it the other way. So looking at this one, which is our first metal one, it looks pretty good. The scratches are good. We could probably do with softening the scratches slightly. They look a little bit too abrupt. Also, there's a line right here, and if I look at some of the other images, this one's tileable, so that one doesn't count. No, I'm not really seeing a line, so that just must be a glitch in the texture or something. So I could obviously go to the texture and look at that and see if there definitely is that weird line. It could also be a texture seam. If I come back to here and we look at the UV texture editor, there it is. This is how our texture is getting laid out. I'm going to go to the metal one and just grab these UVs here. And if you look, okay, the seam for it, the edges of this, are all the way around the back. So I'm not seeing the texture edge. So it is just part of the texture itself. That's just kind of like a weird spot. Okay, so you get that sometimes with textures where they just do that kind of stuff. Overall, they all look really nice. The rubber, I think, could use a little bit more darkness to it. The wood could probably use a little bit more bump. That's good. That's our glass right there. Here's the plastic. These have little pits. I'm going to take the bump outward. Okay, so they actually have like little bumps going out. So the plastic will bump out. I'm going to soften these a little bit. This could be darker. The wood could be a little bit more bumpy. And then these two are good. Okay, so I'm just going to jump back to Maya. I'm going to go to start the wood. And you'll see that all the materials are on here now. Sorry, not all the materials. All the layers here are on this. Alright, so I'm going to go down to standard bump. Click the back button to get back here. And let's make it negative 0.25. I'm going to make sure it bumps the correct way. Okay. So that was it for that one. The plastic, I think. Yeah, I wanted to bump that one the other way also. So let's go to that. Go to this. Hit the back button. Back to Nuke. Okay, the metal, I'm going to soften that, so I'm going to jump to Photoshop. Here's my metal scratches. Now I can do this a couple different ways. One, I can do it in here. Or two, I can just jump into Maya, switch to the metal layer, click on this, click on my file, and I can add that filtering. And that filtering is just going to blur it a little bit. Okay, so we can see what that looks like. Okay, the plastic I adjusted, the rubber I want to darken. Let's go to rubber. There we go. So I'm just multiplying this by 0.1. That should darken it more. Alright, so now I'm going to save. Now I don't need to re-render out concrete. I do need to because I need to make sure they're rounded. Okay, if I didn't need to re-render out concrete or glass, I could just click this. Concrete here, glass there, and it won't render these two layers. But because I need to, I'm just going to do that. Okay, so I'm going to re-render these, output them, whatever. Once you're done with them, and you're satisfied with these looking like a rubber, a metal, a plastic, and so on, what we're going to do is we're just going to write these out. So let me just pop these off. Come on. There we go. So I'm just going to do one at a time. So I'm going to go to my metal, and I'm just going to hit tab and add a write node. And I'm going to say where I want to save this. So I'm going to go to my D drive, work, lighting, images, Sarcona, final metal .tif. Okay, so I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to hit render. It's going to say input. Yep. There it goes. And then what I can do is just drag this to the next one, and then just change the metal to plastic, and then hit render. Okay. Then take this arrow to the next one. Rubber. Render. Okay. And I'm just going to do this for each one of these. That way it all goes to the same spot. They all have the same name, minus the specifics of which one it is. There we go. Okay, so now that's what you're going to turn into me, are these 6 images here. Okay, and if you wanted to get fancier, you could render out layers, but we don't need to worry about rendering out layers and adding ambient occlusion to something like this. Obviously, it would look better. We don't need to. Okay, so that's it. That's the rest of the assignment. I'm just going to finish it up for my own sanity. And there's our final bits. Okay, so then this part will be done, and then we can actually start working on our assignments for the class, our portfolio-ish assignments. Okay.